Well, hello again. My name's Adrian Gilbert, and today I'd like to welcome you back to the Invisible College and our investigation into the last book of the Bible, the Apocalypse of St. John, or the Book of Revelation. Yeah, that's the scary one. The one with all the beasts coming out of the sea and the Scarlet Whore of Babylon and, all the terrible things at the end of the age. But we've been investigating this, and we're finding out that a lot of this, what we're looking at, is actually symbolism. It's not to be taken quite literally. However, there are things which are very prophetic in that book. And what we're going to be talking about today is what's called the first of three woes. Now, this occurs in chapter 9 of the Revelation and is connected with the angels blowing trumpets, and each trumpet blast brings about another event or series of events. And this particular one is of interest, I think, because you'll judge it when you've been through the lecture, but I'm quite convinced that this is actually a prediction or prophecy for what we're going through now, what you can call a coronavirus epidemic. So it is very important to us, obviously, and I think you'll agree with me that it's not just that this is important, but it also that it gives us a positioning where we are now in the book as it's progressing, and some idea about what's going to come next, because that's what's so worrying or so important. When are these things going to happen? So without more ado, I'm going to take you into this lecture, and it's the first of the three woes. Now it actually begins just at the end of after the fourth blast, and we hear an eagle. And the first group of four trumpets ends with the appearance of an eagle at the zenith. It prophesies, "Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on earth at the blast of the other trumpets that the three angels are about to blow." Now, hang on. By this time, 4 out of 7 trumpets have already blasted. This is going to be the 5th trumpet. So it's the first of the last 3. Now, eagles, which fly higher than other birds, are traditionally thought to be messengers of God. The eagle lectern in a church, I don't know if you've ever seen that. If you go into a church, they very often have a kind of reading platform where the Bible is put on, a big Bible. And the platform that the Bible's put on looks like an eagle with its wings out like this. And the priest or vicar or whoever reads from the text of the Bible, which is sitting on that lectern. And so the lectern is said to carry the word of God, because the Bible's supposedly the word of God. So it's carrying the word of God on its wings, which is then being read out by the priest to the gathered congregation. So again, here we have the eagle, and the eagle's saying this woe. Thus, eagles symbolize messengers of divine intent, bringing the commands of God to earth. The eagle is bringing a prophecy that there are to be 3 woes to complete the 7 trumpet blasts. Now, the images presented in the book of Revelation are confusing, to say the least. Why is this? Are we living in a cartoon world where monsters described are for real? I mean, for instance, a four-headed leopard with wings. What on earth is this that he's seeing? It's not really going to be a leopard with wings chasing around, is there? But it's an image or a symbol for what is to come. So I don't believe that this is to be the case. As we have already seen, the Revelation of St. John is a book filled with puzzling riddles. Mostly these are given in the form of extraordinary images. They're not presented in a straightforward way. Again, why is this? I believe that the reason is quite simple. As anyone who has tried techniques for improving the memory will confirm, these mostly rely on the fact that our brain remembers ideas when they're linked to absurd pictures. I don't know if you've ever done any of these memory books, but ways of trying to improve your memory. What you will remember much better is an absurd image. And the more absurd, the better, because your memory likes, your brain latches on to something like this that looks different, that's weird. We don't remember the mundane. What did you have for lunch last week? You don't know, do you? Because lunch is normally, you have a set of different menus you maybe cook up for yourself or you have regularly, but you don't really remember what you had last Tuesday. But if you had had an extraordinary meal, of, octopus steaks cooked in a brandy sauce or something and served by a Polynesian chef in a grass skirt, you might remember that because that's a strange image. And that's kind of how things like the Book of Revelation work. They make use of imagery. So, for example, we might meet at a party a man who introduces himself as Peter Pikestaff. We want to remember his name, so we form an image and link it to this event. We see in our mind's eye St. Peter. However, instead of holding his keys, he has in his hand a staff that is also a pike. We might commit this image to memory. Next time we meet him, we recall the image and immediately remember his name, Peter Pikestaff. So, St. Peter traditionally carries keys to the gates of heaven. That's a symbol that's usually associated with him. But if he's holding a staff, which is actually also a pike, and you saw, it's St. Peter, he's got a pikestaff. Oh, yes, Peter Pikestaff. You remember the guy's name. So that's kind of how memory works. And I believe that Revelations uses similar principles. Each prophecy is given in symbolic form as an absurd image. This helped John to remember what he had seen and so write his book. He didn't understand most of the imagery he was being shown, but it was enough, memorable enough for him to be able to describe it. So that's what this is all about. He's got to remember, he's told to write everything down, but he can't be writing it down when he's actually busy seeing it. He's got to keep those images in his mind, and when he's come out of the reverie, he writes it down like writing down a dream, after you've had the dream. Obviously had a lot more training in this than you or I do, so he's pretty good at it, but he has to remember it, so it's given to him in images that are going to seem absurd, but he's going to remember them. So, images are here's an example of images as symbols. Armed with this insight, let us now break down the images as they appear. We must separate out the elements of what John describes on the basis that they are signifiers rather than literals. In other words, we have to break up the image into its parts, its constituent parts, and try to understand what they signify, not what they are figuratively, literally, right? So he's not dreaming, seeing locusts as such. He's actually seeing what they represent. This is actually no different from the way that Daniel approached his dream interpretations for King Nebuchadnezzar and also his own visions for the future. Daniel's one of the prophets in the Old Testament who was a great dream analyzer. He was a captive in Babylon, and we're going to be doing some programs about him as well. But he needed to be able to interpret the dreams of King Nebuchadnezzar. If he didn't, not only would he be put to death, but all the other wise men in the kingdom were going to be. And the king was that angry. So he needed to be good at his job, which fortunately for all concerned he was. So in King Nebuchadnezzar's dream, Daniel saw the statue of a man with a golden head, silver arms and breast, bronze lower trunk, legs of iron, and feet partly of clay and partly of iron. So this was the king's dream. He saw this. The king had dreamed this statue of this man, and he wanted to know what it was all about. He wouldn't even tell Daniel what he had dreamt. Daniel had to have the dream himself, which is pretty amazing that he was able to do that. So he was able to say, yeah, this is what you dreamt. And then he has to go on and interpret what it means, which he now does. And we'll discuss this in later lectures, but the statue was not a forecast in itself. It concerned a succession of empires beginning with the Babylonian Empire. Symbolism was involved, but the correct interpretation was given to Daniel in a dream of his own. So the head symbolized the Babylonian Empire. The arms and chest of silver represented the Medo-Persian Empire. The lower part of the trunk represented the Greek Empire after Alexander the Great. And that was followed by the legs, the Roman Empire. And that's succeeded by the feet and toes, which had some of the strength of the iron of the Roman Empire, but also weakness of clay. So that's the successive kingdoms that would follow after the Roman Empire, which make up the Babylonian succession, or what's termed in the Bible the times of the Gentiles. So as I said, we're going to talk about that book of Daniel, because it is actually very much connected with the book of Revelation. But I'll do that in another lecture or two. So we're now going to read out the text from this fifth trumpet call and exactly what it has to say. I can switch on my Kindle here. There we go. Right, so it begins as I say. Then I looked, and I heard an eagle crying with a loud voice as it flew directly overhead. Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth, at the blasts of the other trumpets that the three angels are about to blow. And a fifth angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to earth, and he was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. He opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. Then from the smoke came locusts on the earth, and they were given power like the power of scorpions of the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth, or any green plant, or any tree, but only those people who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. They were allowed to torment them for 5 months, but not to kill them, and their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it stings someone. And in those days people will seek death and will not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee from them. In appearance, the locusts were like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were what looked like crowns of gold. Their faces were like human faces, their hair like women's hair, and their teeth like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the noise of their wings was like the noise of many chariots with horses rushing into battle. They have nails and stings like scorpions, and their power to hurt people for 5 months is in their tails. They have as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek he is called Apollyon. So this is the first woe, as it's called. We're now going to have to break down the symbolism here and see what it's actually saying to us, what we need to know to be able to interpret what this is all about. And I believe we can do that now, that this is now the time. So the immediate effect of the fifth trumpet blast is to bring a star falling from heaven to earth. This star symbolizes the descent of a powerful entity who acts as jailer of dark spirits in the bottomless pit, which in Hebrew is called Gehenna. This being is called Apollyon in Greek and Abaddon in Hebrew. Both names mean destruction. We therefore have the sense that this being is sent to punish mankind. The sentence has already been given. Let's now break down what this all symbolizes. The name Apollyon, we're told, means the destroyer. However, it clearly identifies as the familiar Greek god Apollo. Now, I looked this up in Wikipedia. It tells us his Homeric name was Apollon. The Doric form, there are different kinds of Greeks. There were Ionian Greeks, Doric Greeks. There was a third one, I forget what they were now, called the Doric form Apollon, and there's the Greek spelling, Apollon, is more archaic as it is derived from an earlier Apollyon. Right, so there's the earlier form Apollyon, which is almost exactly the same as Apollyon that we're being told about here. Now Apollo, the Greek god Apollo, was both a healer and an inflictor of plagues when deemed necessary. Plagues were sent either as punishment or for purification. I should just add here that Apollo was also associated with prophecy. The Delphic oracle, Delphi, where people would go to get their fortune told, and the priestesses sat by an underground spring in a dark cavern, and they would, I think there was some kind of gases coming up from the earth that would enable them to go into a trance state, and they could interpret or give prophecies from Apollo. And that again ties in with this idea of this prophetic oracle. That Apollo is connected with the underworld. I know he's a sun god actually, but he also has this connection with the underworld and with fortune telling. And the presence of the pagan god Apollo in the Revelation is surprising until you realize John was writing in Anatolian Greeks, and to the Anatolian Greeks. That's the people, the Greeks living in Turkey. It's clear that Apollyon is used as a name, their name, for what we would call the Archangel Michael. And just in case you think I'm making this up, the name Michael or Michael derives from that of a Persian Zoroastrian equivalent called Michir. Yeah, and he's still called that. I've met Zoroastrian people, and they have a great thing about Michir, the Archangel Michir. Yeah, they have two that they really revere. One is Michir, the other they call Sarosh, who we would call Gabriel. These archangels with the word El on the end. Yeah, so Michael and Gabriel, and there were others like Raphael. There were 7 of these, and they are the 7 spirits that in the very beginning of the Bible we're told the Elohim actually were sent to terraform the earth. Now I've written about that in the or recorded about that earlier on, but so Michael is one of these 7 L's, or 7 archangels as we would call them, and he's obviously the same as Apollyon, has the same function, bringing about punishment, putting Satan into hell, keeping the dark guys underground, stopping them from messing things up too much, And eventually, later on in the Revelation, he's going to be casting down Lucifer down into the bottomless pit. So he is the same guy. And Michael is also an angel who's very much associated with the sun and with fire. So Michael Michir is associated with fire, judgment, and the sun. And those are all things that are associated with Michir or Mithras in the Persian religion. The feast of St. Michael, called Michaelmas, is on the 29th of September in the sign of Libra, and it heralds the season of autumn. You have to understand that the autumn period of the year is the period of judgment and justice. It starts off with Libra, which is weighing in the balances. You then come to Scorpio with its sting and bringing about death and judgment. And then you have Sagittarius, which is a sign very much associated with the law, with handing down the law. So we have very much the judgment season is being talked about here with the apparition of Apollyon, which I believe is the same as St. Michael in the Christian tradition. So he opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft arose smoke like the smoke from a great furnace, and the sun and air were darkened with smoke from the shaft. Now that contrasts with the smoke that was coming from the incense when the incense burner was thrown, which is an earlier lecture, thrown to the earth, and the souls who are under the altar, their prayers going up to heaven with the smoke, calling for vengeance for what had been done to them. Well, this is another kind of smoke. This is the punishment smoke that's coming out from the pit of hell. This statement is the converse of what was witnessed when the seventh seal was opened. On that occasion, an angel stood by the altar of God. The incense from his censer symbolized the prayers of the martyrs below the altar. Their prayers called on God to avenge their martyrdom by the wicked people who had killed them. The opening of the pit and the release of smoke that turns into locusts seems to symbolize that the time of vengeance has come. This time the smoke is not sweet-smelling, but acrid, dirty, and hot. It is the smoke of sins coming back from hell as karma from the past. We have to remember that what John is seeing is a vision in the form of a dream. He is not seeing real locusts with scorpion tails, but rather dream images that need to be analysed and interpreted. And that's exactly what we're going to do now. We're going to go into this symbolism of exactly what these locusts, these scorpions, whatever they are, symbolize as we break down the image. And we will find that it actually ties in very much with astrology and the astrology of the gate of hell. But let's go into that. The smoke gives birth to locusts who are given the power of scorpions. They do not harm the earth or vegetation, but only those people who are not marked on the forehead with the seal of God. The sealing of the faithful was done in chapter 7. First, it was the 144,000 from the tribes of Israel. These, I believe, are starseed souls who volunteered to come to earth and incarnate among mankind in order to help in the process of redemption. I've discussed this in an earlier lecture. I think it was something like lecture 4a. It's among my Revelation lectures. You'll find it. But this idea that the 144,000 who travel with the Christ everywhere he goes, they are souls who've come into the earth from elsewhere. You could call them starseeds. I think that's a popular name these days. They've come to help with the harvest of the earth. They've come here as teachers of mankind. They've come here to alleviate the suffering and to help to bring this earth back into the community of heaven. You have to understand we live in a fallen world. At least this is how it's taught in the Bible. I know a lot of you probably don't believe in the Bible and you think it's nonsense. But this is what's taught, and this is what Christianity and Judaism has always believed. So the description of locusts is a complex of different ideas. We need to unpick these to see what is really meant. 1. The locusts are commanded by Apollo Michael in his guise of sender of plagues. Now remember that normally speaking, locusts are far from leaving the grass alone and the plants alone and the trees alone. That's exactly what they go for. So we're not talking about real actual locusts. Actually, I believe there is a locust plague in Africa at the moment and another one brewing in China, but that's another story. But these locusts are symbolic locusts, and just as locusts destroy everything in their path, so these beasties, whatever they are doing the same. There is a connection with horses. Horses prepared for war. So there's an equine symbol involved here somehow down the line. It's not explained exactly how, but we got war horses involved, equipped for battle. These horses have women's hair but teeth like lions. In other words, they look soft and gentle at first glance, but actually they're deadly and have to be dealt with. And you must not turn your back. You've got to be aware of these things. They have exoskeletons, which are like iron breastplates, so they're not easily dealt with and killed off. They have stings like scorpions. Yeah, so they have something that can penetrate, and cause this pain and this suffering, just like a scorpion with its sting. And if you've, I've never had a scorpion sting, but I have heard that scorpion stings are very painful. They might not kill you. Some scorpions will, but not all scorpions have deadly stings. But they will certainly hurt a lot, worse than a bee sting. These particular scorpions are able to fly. Now, generally speaking, regular scorpions cannot fly. They scuttle about on the earth. They're very, very tough. They have exoskeletons, and you have to really stamp on them hard to crush them. And they can survive things like hiding under a rock, an atomic blast. Yes, really. They're among the toughest animals on Earth. I think they're very ancient as well. Their stings are very painful, like those of scorpions, but they don't generally kill. And then we're told the punishment will last only 5 months. So now let's look into this and see what this description, look a little bit deeper into it as what this description might be about. And I've listed some things here. So locusts like horses prepared for battle. In other words, there's a horse as well as a scorpion connection. On their heads are crowns of gold. Now we'll return to this. Their hair like women's hair and their teeth like lions' teeth. Women's hair suggests that they travel in disguise. At first sight they appear harmless. The lion's teeth show that they are extremely dangerous predators. Breastplates like breastplates of iron means they're well armoured and can't be penetrated with ordinary weapons. Scorpions too have armour in the form of exoskeletons. Noise of their wings, like noise of many chariots with horses going into battle, implies terror and fear at their approach. People will try to hide from them. They have tails with stings like scorpions, and their power to hurt for 5 months is in their tails. Scorpion stings, even if they don't kill, are very painful. Also, the star sign of Scorpio is associated with payback or karma. Scorpio comes immediately after Libra, the time of Michaelmas, which represents justice or judgment. So symbolically, Scorpio symbolizes the carrying out of a sentence as punishment for wrongdoing. In this case, extreme pain, but no death. So now I want to turn our attention and start unpicking this Scorpio symbolism further and see where it leads us, beginning with ancient Egypt. We've had ancient Egyptian references before in the Revelation. You've got to remember that Egypt and Israel, or Judah, were actually close neighbours, and the Israelites had spent time in Israel. So there's a lot of ideas which were Egyptian have actually passed into the Judaic Hebrew tradition as well, and from there into Christianity. So this whole connection with Scorpio does have symbolic meaning which can be unpicked. These considerations draw us first to the symbol of the Scorpion goddess in Egyptian mythology. Yes, there was a goddess in Egyptian mythology who was actually symbolized by a scorpion. It could actually be considered to be an aspect of Isis, but we won't go into that. Her name was Selket, or Serket, and not surprisingly, she was associated with the sign of Scorpio. She's sometimes shown with wings. You can see in that lower image here. I've got these images from a famous book called Hamlet's Mill. If you haven't read that book, I really do recommend it. It's a cornucopia of understanding about symbolism and how it ties in with astronomy. The authors of that book, unfortunately, are both passed on now. Did a huge amount of work on this, and it's well worth reading. Originally published, I think, in '69. She's sometimes shown with wings. Scorpions, of course, do have exoskeletons and can survive extremely harsh conditions, but they don't have actually wings. In Egypt, in Egyptian depictions, Selket is shown with a woman's face and long hair, and you can see that particularly in the top image there. In terms of esoteric astrology, there's something else to consider. In many mythologies, Mother Scorpion dwells at the end of the Milky Way. Here she receives the souls of the dead, and you can see this in Hamlet's Mill, page 243, for those of you who want page references. This is where I found this. And the star sign Scorpio is close to the winter solstice position of the sun. We're going to look further into that shortly. Right, so I know that Scorpio, if you're Scorpio, your birthday is in the end of October and the first 2/3 of November. It's in that period. But you have to understand that the actual position of the star sign Scorpio is not the same as the sun sign, so-called, would have you believe. Now then, I'm just turning back here a moment to the chapter 4 of the book of Revelation, where it said here, "Lo, a gate in heaven is open." And I showed you all this, and this picture is a painting that I've actually had done for me by a friend of mine called Bengt Alfredson, who unfortunately has passed on himself now. But it's basically showing you the opening of the Stargate. And this is another Stargate. There's two of them. There's one in the northern hemisphere and one in the southern hemisphere. The northern one is between the signs of Gemini and Taurus, and the southern one is between the signs of Scorpio and Sagittarius. You understand that Scorpio, the sign of Scorpio is opposite Taurus in the zodiac, and the sign of Sagittarius is opposite to Gemini. So in ancient times, there was an understanding that there were two gates in heaven. One was in the northern hemisphere, the other in the southern. The sun positioned itself at these gates at different times of year. And in episode 4, I explained how the apocalypse began with the sun at the northern gateway, the gates of heaven. So that's how chapter 4 in the Revelations actually starts. Lo, a gate in heaven is open. And now we're going to consider the southern Stargate, but first we'll look at the two of them. So here you can see in this diagram here, I've shown you the two gates here. The left-hand sphere is the northern hemisphere, and the right hand is the southern hemisphere. And you can see how the ecliptic, this line here that runs across the middle, and I'm looking at the left hand northern hemisphere here, crosses over the Milky Way, and it's where the center equator or median plane of the Milky Way is, where it crosses over the ecliptic, is where the gate is positioned. It's a symbolic gate. I'm not saying there's a great big gate up there in heaven in the sky, right? This gate is to do with time, actually, and it's to do with the precession of the equinoxes. Now that's a whole other subject. I've been into it many times before in other lectures, and if you look on my YouTube channel, you'll find all these other lectures. So I'm not going to dwell on that here. But the other gate you can see in the right-hand side here, where the ecliptic is crossing over the other limb of the Milky Way. You can think of the ecliptic and the Milky Way as being like two bangles round each other, and there's two places where they cross over. And again, where the median plane of the Milky Way crosses over the ecliptic, that's where the southern stargate is, between Sagittarius and Scorpio. Right, so I'm just going to show you now the star positions of the northern stargate. Again, as I say, you'll find all this in lecture 4, but I'm just going to recap quickly. Northern Stargate was believed to be at the cusp of Taurus and Gemini over the upstretched hand of Orion. Now, I'm not inventing this. You'll find this in ancient texts, things like the Dream of Scipio. And on the 29th of June 2000 AD, all 7 planets of the ancients, that's the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter and Saturn, were positioned in close proximity to this gate. I call this opening the Stargate, and it heralded the beginning of the revelation. And here you can see it. It's Orion amidst the 7 candlesticks. And there you can see the 7 stars, or 7 planets of the ancients. As far as they're concerned, the Sun and Moon were planets. They didn't know about Uranus and Neptune, let alone Pluto, or any other planets or moons or planet X or anything like that. They had 7 planets, and that's what they worked with in their astrology. And this situation of the 7 planets, including the Sun and Moon, around Orion like this has not happened in the last 2,000 years at least. I checked. I went back year by year to check that, and it hasn't happened until the year 2000. That's why we have the opening of the Stargate at that time. And I took a party of people to Egypt and Israel to witness what was happening with this opening of the Stargate. But again, there's a video all about that on my YouTube channel. It's made by South African TV. You can have a look there if you want to see that video. So this is the lower gate in heaven is open. This is what it's talking about. But now we see that we have a second gate that is going to open, which is the gate to the bottomless pit. That's the one between Scorpio. It's over the sting of Scorpio, close to Sagittarius. Right there where the equator of the Milky Way crosses over the ecliptic in the southern sky. And again, we have the 7 stars positioning around there. So this is the first woe of the eagle, to be connected with the positions of the Sun at the Sagittarius Stargate. There you can see I've ringed the Sun there with that orange circle. The Sun is, again, remember that Apollo is a solar deity in Greek mythology. So Apollyon is connected with the Sun, and there he is standing at the Stargate. Again, Michael, again another solar archangel. This gate is at the southern crossing of the ecliptic and the equator of the Milky Way. This is the legal part. This whole area that you're looking at the sky is the legal part of the zodiac, from Libra through Scorpio to Sagittarius. And there you can see the 7 planets of the ancients gathered in this legal sector. And so we have got this situation where the breakdown of this symbolism, the scorpion, the horse part, Sagittarius is half horse, half man. Yeah, has a human head. Got big bitey teeth, I guess. And it's all coming out of the pit, the lower Stargate, the pit of hell, if you like. And you've got the 7 stars gathered around. Now, there's one other thing. Remember the eagle that declared the prophecy for 3 woes? Features this too. Ophiuchus in Greek mythology was a son of Apollo. So again, we got this connection with Apollo, with that constellation there. So some people call it the 13th sign of the zodiac, but I don't think that's really relevant. But we've also got here Aquila, the eagle, and it said there the eagle was in the sky, saying, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" Yeah, there's the eagle in the sky. You've got the pit of Abaddon down there, with the sun positioned at it, opening the lid, letting the smoke out with the scorpions, the locusts with the scorpions and the armour and the sting that hurts like crazy. All there, they see Scorpio. But there's one other thing. Taking all these factors together, I believe we can interpret the first woe as being a reference to the corona plague we've been enduring. It first appeared around the time of the winter solstice in 2019, when symbolically Apollo, the sun, opened the door to the bottomless pit. So that in 2019, the start of this virus that's been causing such havoc in the world was actually occurred when the sun was positioned close to that southern gate over Scorpio and Sagittarius, this whole connection. And the smoke comes out, and the smoke turns into being locusts with scorpions with their tails. It's the virus which floats in the air. This virus is airborne. Get that? Remember that. It flies. Its sting is in its tail. It has these stingers on it, which attach to cells in your body and cause the terrible suffering of the corona. And reference to the southern Stargate at the cusp of Scorpio and Sagittarius. And Apollo was associated with the sun, which is standing at this gate. Apollo or Apollyon is associated with plagues. We haven't had a plague for a long time. This virus was released, is even called corona, right? So we're told that these locusts, these flying locusts, which are scorpions with horse attributes and stingers and all the rest of it, they're given a crown. Latin for crown is corona. It's the coronavirus. And it's going around the world stinging like crazy. And it's caused an immense amount of damage. And it's unique in what it's done. There's never before been a lockdown like this that's encompassed the entire world. It's a destroyer. It is indeed a destroyer linked with Sagittarius Scorpion and a crown symbolism. Sagittarian Scorpion crown symbolism, all tied up with this one virus. Arguing against this interpretation is that the coronavirus pandemic has lasted more than 9 months. Yes, I accept that. However, that's not what the text actually says. True, the torment is to last for 9 months, but that is the duration of the illness, not the pandemic. So if you get the coronavirus, you're probably not going to be free of it for 5 months. People have died from COVID-19 infection, and this should not happen. We're told that they're not to kill. But can we say these people wouldn't have died anyway? It's hard to tell. The vast majority of mortalities has been with the elderly or those already sick from other causes. For the majority of the population, infection has been no worse than any other flu, and sometimes milder. Contrast this with bubonic plague, the Black Death, which killed vast numbers of human population and at the time was incurable. And finally, there's been many epidemics in world history. However, the Corona-19 pandemic is unique for another reason. Never before has a disease affected the entire planet, with everyone aware of it at the same time. There have been worldwide lockdowns leading to a global financial catastrophe not yet acknowledged. So we must consider now that the eagle warns of 2 further woes that are yet to come. It seems the coronavirus is just a foretaste of what's to come. It is really a wake-up call that the judgment at the end of the present age is coming. So maybe it is time to reconsider whether atheism is really such a good idea in a universe far more extraordinary than we imagine. So I'll leave it with you there. I mean, I believe in God, and I believe in Christianity and in Jesus Christ. I'm not a preacher, I'm not a priest. I've done plenty I'm ashamed of in my life, same as you have, I expect. But we need to understand that this world does not belong to the human race, that our life and life on Earth is not an accident. I'm going to be doing some lectures on Darwinism for you to have a look at. We live in an incredible universe with far more possibilities than we could ever imagine. And we need to wake up and to realise that this Earth is a battleground, and the battle is fully engaged at the moment. And the prize of it is not just this Earth, but your very soul. So on that, I'm going to leave you there. And I won't say I hope you enjoyed the lecture, because I'm sure it's a worry. But it's better to be worried and forewarned than to be taken in your sleep. So I'll leave it with you there. So thank you very much for your time. And if you can, please subscribe to my channel if you come to my channel. I'm also setting up a Patreon link. That will be operational, I hope, within the next couple of weeks. And that will offer opportunities to become associate members with the Invisible College, which will keep you informed further about what's going on, with these interpretations of prophecy, but I'm also into a lot of other things besides that. In terms of preparing ourselves, because I do believe that we are indeed living at the end of the age. So thank you very much again for your time, and I look forward to seeing you again.